Hi everyone, I welcome you all to week 4 of Project Asari's 15-week program. Today we're going to discuss the topic of introduction to social movements. Today is going to be a foundational session. So in today's session, before I begin with today's session, I just want to give a simple background of what we're going to do today. So this is a real life scenario where there was a village in India where trees were being cut down, and one woman hugs a tree to stop it from being cut. Other villagers join in, and soon hundreds of people are protecting forests. Does anybody know what is this? What is this scenario? Yes, ask me.
Yeah, it was the Chipko movement
Yes,
that
exactly.
has happened. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, definitely. It was the Chipko movement. It was again a social movement where there were a lot of people who came together to actually help protect the trees and stop them from being cut. I hope this example was known to everybody. Rubani Abhi, do you want any explanation?
No, it's fine.
Alright. So in today's session, we're going to do what is a social movement, what are the components of a social movement, why do these exist, challenges faced by such movements, and some common examples of these movements, right? Now, firstly, let's discuss what is a social movement. So it is when a group of people are working together to bring a social change in the society. There are three key elements to a social movement. First, a shared goal. A shared goal is a common goal that the people who come into a movement agree upon and fight for it. For example, if there's a student council who's running in your school, every candidate who's standing up for the position of head boy, head girl, or president of the student council is going to have different goals, is going to have different incentives. Okay, just let me clarify. I'm going to use the word incentive again and again just to make you understand. Incentive means it is a sort of attraction that you give to the other party so that they are motivated to work in a better way. For example, if you are studying and you are not able to focus, right? So you just tell yourself, okay, after 30 minutes of study I am going to watch 10 minutes of TV, or 10 minutes, or I'm going to listen to 10 minutes of music, right? So those 10 minutes of music is your incentive. You are incentivizing yourself to study because you are going to get a 10-minute music break after every 30 minutes. Do you get this word incentive? Just give me a thumbs up. Okay, understood. Does okay, cool. Yeah, so shared goal, yeah, these are like common incentives. So as I was saying, giving the example of a student council, so all of these candidates are going to have different incentives or goals to actually enter the student council. Again, it is very common in social movements as well, where people who come in a social movement have the same kind of goals that they want to carry forward. Secondly, collective action is an element of social movement. That is to say, a social movement in its core already means that the change must come from a collective community or a group, so that everyone must work together harmoniously. Thirdly, desire for change. Change is like the catalyst for any social movement, and hence it must be taken into account because every social movement can make a change. However, can make a change, cannot make a change, but to its core, a social movement must make some kind of change to a certain extent, because then there'll be no like fun of having a social movement in the first place, because it actually means to bring about a change in the society. Again, pretty easy slide. Now we have to understand as to why do social movements even exist in the society. Firstly, problems in society. Now there are issues that affect a lot of people, a lot of groups, and that makes their lives unfair or difficult or unsafe, because of which social movements are there to help these people. For example, the LGBTQ community is often considered one of the most vulnerable communities, because these communities are still minorities in many countries, especially in many countries, because of which they generally feel unsafe, or they feel that they are being treated unfairly. Hence, it is very important that a certain movement exists so that they are able to voice their concerns. Secondly, unfair treatment. When certain groups of people are treated worse than others just because they have different identities, different backgrounds, or different beliefs, it is when a social movement comes into being and actually helps these people. Now, I want to take Asmi's example here. She gave us an example of how Indians are still discriminated against by the Western world, right? Because they think that these Indian people are coming here to steal their jobs, to steal their opportunities, right? Again, this is because of their background, because of the identity of the Indians, because of which it has become a big taboo in the Western world. So, again, social movements can exist because you think certain parts of the society are being treated unfairly. Thirdly, lack of rights. When people are denied freedom or opportunities that they should have, such as voting or education or equal treatment, social movements come into being. Very famous example being women. In a lot of countries, women were not allowed to vote, and hence social movements have been existing around the world to allow women to vote. Lastly, environmental concerns. Problems that may harm nature, wildlife, or planet, such as pollution, deforestation, or climate change. Again, very easy. Now, social movement versus individual action. Again, this is a very easy slide. Individual action is an action that you take by yourself, that an individual takes. Here, just one person acts, whereas in a social movement, a lot of people are acting together. Secondly, individual action, there's small influence because there's just one or two people who are there who are making a change. But in a social movement, there is a larger influence because there's larger people whom you're tackling, who you're helping, and who you're taking help from. Lastly, an individual action may just have personal impact, and to some extent can have some social impact as well, but it is very highly unlikely. Whereas in a social movement, there's definitely going to be some kind of societal impact, if not a lot. Components of a social movement. I think this is a really important slide. So I'm not going to read the definitions of whatever I've written here because they're again pretty easy. I'm going to answer the question that all of these terms answer. Cause. So components of a social movement, and this is something that you can also use in your speeches, right? Because remember, I gave you like an acronym to write your arguments. SEEC. Who all remember that? The structure of argument that I gave you. SEEC. Am I audible? Yeah, I am. Okay, so as I was saying, SEEC is a structure that can be followed when you're writing an argument. If you don't know about it, please go watch the video. Anyways, when you're writing an argument or a speech for a debate or a motion that is handling social movements, remember that there's a cause, that is what is wrong, because of which the social movement is happening. Then people who care about that particular movement, leadership who is guiding them, strategy, what is the plan, communication, how do they spread the message, and action, what did they actually do to help that movement succeed. Again, very very important. I would highly recommend you to please screenshot this slide and just study it deeply. Now, examples of famous social movements around the world. So the first one is again a very famous example of the civil rights movement, which happened in the US, where there civil rights movement in the US that was fought against racial discrimination and segregation faced by the African Americans during 1950s and 60s, and through peaceful protests and speeches, activists demanded equal rights, leading to important legal and social changes within the country of the United States. Secondly is the women's suffrage movement. Now, this particular movement that is mentioned here, the picture that is here, um, was happened like across many countries, and awareness campaigns were there to demand political inequality, to demand political equality, sorry, for these women. And the efforts of these protests by a lot of women around the world have landed them equal rights and opportunities in the political scenario of the country. Lastly is the anti-apartheid movement that was opposed. It opposed South Africa's system of racial segregation, also known as apartheid. Activists and citizens and international supporters worked together through protests, campaigns, and political pressure, and the efforts helped end the apartheid system in South Africa, and equal rights were established for everybody. Nelson Mandela is a figure that you must read about because he played a huge role in eradicating apartheid in South Africa, and he's a very inspirational figure as well, so highly recommend you reading that. Now, what makes a movement successful? Again, very easy slide, very based on common sense. A movement must have a clear goal, that is to say that people know exactly what change they want to achieve. Secondly, strong leadership. Leaders should help organize people, make decisions, and keep the movement focused. Third, public support. More people should be willing to join and listen and support the cause that you're fighting for. Persistence means people continue towards change no matter what the result is in the no matter how slow or difficult the journey becomes in between. You must persist, you must continue changing whatever you think is bad. Lastly, effective communication. The movement clearly should explain how its message is going to be communicated amongst the masses. Okay, common challenges faced by a lot of such movements. Firstly, lack of support. Not enough people join or believe in the cause of social movements because people think it might be a waste of time, or they think that other people might judge them for being in a social movement, because again, this is a big taboo again. Secondly, opposition. Some individuals, groups, or institutions may resist a movement's goals. Thirdly, misinformation. False or misleading information can confuse people and can reduce support. There are limited resources. Movements may lack the time, money, volunteers, or materials needed to operate effectively. And lastly, loss of motivation. People may become discouraged if change takes a long time or obstacles arise in the way of them running for us, in the way of them thriving for a social change. Again, I don't think there was anything difficult to understand in all of these slides. I'll just take a 30-second break to have a sip of water, and then there's this slide that I want you all to think about. Just a second. Just give me a quick thumbs up if you had any query before I begin with that slide. Any query? Have you all understood? Thumbs up, whatever. Just give me a sign. Hello, are you all there? Asmi, Abir, Rubani.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alright, so I hope you've all understood this. Now, a very important and my favorite part of the slide. These are three really challenging, not challenging, but like questions that you must ask yourself. I'm going to give no time to think to anybody. I'm going to take random names. So I want Rubani to answer the first question in any way you want to. Do you think that every social movement is good? Can it ever be bad? Who decides whether a movement is good or bad? Rubani, just speak whatever comes to your mind. Honestly, you know what? Let's change this. Um, oh wait. Okay, yeah. So, converse with each other. I want all three of you. I'm giving you like 10-20 seconds to switch on your cameras. It's okay. Nobody is being recorded. You can switch on your cameras no matter whatever your current situation is. Just switch on your cameras and you'll be answering these questions amongst yourselves, and then I'll answer these questions. Please quickly turn on your cameras. It's okay. It's okay. Don't be shy. Just switch on your cameras. Okay. Thank you, Abir. Rubani and Asmi. Okay, perfect. Asmi, could you switch on your camera? Okay, perfect. Okay, so the first question. Wait, I'll just unpin myself. Okay, perfect. So the first question is, every social movement good? Can it ever be bad? Who decides whether a movement is good or bad? Anyone from you can start speaking. Okay. Okay, Rubani can start speaking. And just a minute. Just a minute, Rubani, I'll just explain you. So Rubani can start speaking. For example, Rubani says something, and Abir or Asmi would want to rebut it or go against it or go for it or add an additional explanation. You can do so, whatever you want to do. Just converse amongst yourselves. Yeah, Rubani.
Yes, I think a social movement can be bad because if it uses violence instead of peaceful protest, spreads hatred against a religion, caste, gender, or race, or if it tries to remove democracy and rights instead of expanding them.
Okay. Anybody who wants to go against whatever she said or wants to add anything additional, Abir or Asmi?
Yes, I would like to add that it's correct that people might use violent methods to state their point, but social movements are based totally upon what people feel, like how they feel about a specific system. Some people might like it and some people might not. So it can be negative.
Okay. Asmi?
Well, I don't think anyone particularly decides whether a movement is good or bad. I think people decided, right? If it supports a peaceful cause, like as she said, that if it spreads hatred or any violence, I don't think it's a good cause at all. But if it means, like, if it devotes to a larger part of the community of any country or any religion, I think a movement may be good, but it mostly depends on its supporters or how they spread this cause at all.
Yes, definitely. I agree with all three of you, and of course, a movement cannot be called good or bad because it all literally just depends upon the perspective as to who is looking at it, right? For example, let's take a very basic example. Long ago, when countries around the world, they were still fighting against the government for their freedom, etc. The governments of those countries opposed those freedom movements because, again, they were going against the government, and it was not good for the governments in general. So of course it really depends upon the perspective, because from the perspective of the government, those freedom social movements were not good, but from the perspective of the people, those movements were good, because they were fighting for a particular cause, right? So yes, it all depends upon how you take it, how you choose it, what kind of perspective are you giving, because the thing what kind of perspective are you giving, because at the end of the day, a movement is actually defined by the kind of impact and the kind of evidence that by the kind of impact that it creates upon its subjects, right? So yes, definitely. Okay, the second question: does having a lot of supporters mean that the movement? Yes, Abir.
No. Having a lot of supporters does not mean the movement is specifically successful, because we know the power of the government. They can easily suppress any movement, if they don't feel that it supports their own cause. But it does mean that the movement is right, because if you have a lot of supporters, it's a really small chance that many people are supporting a wrong cause. So if there are a lot of people, that means that there is some truth to that cause, and we should support that social movement.
Mm-hmm. Anybody can randomly start speaking, I won't say. Yeah.
Well, I think yes, having a lot of supporters mean the movement is successful, because when someone starts a movement, they want to bring awareness about the cause of the movement, right? And having a lot of supporters mean yes, there has been a lot of awareness about the cause of the movement, and it can like it is not necessary it is good, but yes, it is as it can be said as influential, because if a lot of people are supporting it, they will have opinions of a positive side about it, right? And maybe the government can suppress them, but a lot of movements have been made successful because a lot of people were supporting it.
Mm-hmm. Rubani.
Like Abir said, that governments and or courts or powerful groups refuse to change and all, even if some movements fail. I mean, like, even if the movements are huge, the government can make them fail.
Mm-hmm.
Other times, small movements win because timing and public opinions and the media is on their side.
All right. Perfect. Just a second. Entire screen. Okay. Agreed with all of you. So again, I think we again had like really opposing views over here, because Abir started with how small movements generally do not mean that they are successful, because governments can suppress them easily. But on and Rubani also said that small movements means that a lot of people are on their side as well, but at the same time they are still at a higher risk of getting suppressed by higher authorities, as opposed to what Asmi said, that if a lot of people know about a particular movement, it means that a lot of people have do appreciate the kind of cause that is happening there. They do think that the cause that the social movement is fighting for is worth fighting for, and hence, because there's a lot of people, it means that a lot of people have the kind of awareness that they want for the particular problem that the movement is being fought for, right? But again, the thing is that at the end of the day, the number of people who come to your program, or the number of people who come to your movement, does not really matter as much as the kind of impact and the kind of change that you make with that kind of movement, right? For example, there's a lot of students who do side projects, right? For example, I as a student, I'm doing this project as a side project, right? I may not have the most amount of students in the world, but the impact per student is a lot. So even like in your life or in general, if you're like fighting for something, if you are advocating for something, always remember that the impact per person matters more than the amount of the people that you're dealing with. So again, quality over quantity always. Lastly, is it better that people start a movement collectively, or a powerful institution does it alone? Just a second. Yes. Yeah, Abir.
According to me, both methods have their own advantages, ma'am. But if a powerful institution like does it alone, ma'am, the institution will have a lot of resources, because compared to the other people. But if the people start the movement, more amount of people, meaning more amount of minds, different types of people, that shows that how many people, how many different types of people support that movement, which probably means that that movement is right. So according to me, that people should start a movement collectively rather than a powerful institution,
Mm-hmm.
even though both of them have their own, you know, uh, green flags.
Yeah. Ask me.
Well, I think it better like depends on the cause of the movement. Like for example, if the movement is related to a common man's life, like such as like a voting movement, right? For voting movement, then people like I think that people starting a movement may be better because it can spread easily and the common man understand it better because if the cause is literally about them, and if the cause is something higher like in education system or how like a corrupted system, then the powerful institutions doing it alone may be better because it may lead to less violence. Because sometimes people think that violence may be the answer, like a lot of people, but the powerful institution doing it may have also an influence. So I think it depends on the cause.
Mm-hmm. Rubani.
Yeah. Change, like, I was gone to the washroom, so I don't know, like, what Abir said. And I only heard half of what Asmi said.
Yeah, it's okay if you like
So,
want to add something what Ask Me said or your own points. You can just speak. I'll take repetition as well.
okay. So, like, change that comes from people is more democratic. Institutions may not know, like, ground problems. When farmers, students, or workers start the movement, they speak from real experience. Nothing about us without us. Like, something.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, guys. It was really interesting to know your views on these particular questions, because I really liked how all of you said that movements really depend upon. I think a common answer that I heard from all of you was that movements should really be mobilized by common people, because the thing with such movements is that it is always easier for people to understand these movements, because at the end of the day these movements are being held for the society, for the common people, and if people mobilize change themselves, it is obviously going to be better in terms of the common man understanding these problems, because as Rubani said, these people who are mobilizing these movements are speaking from experience, and because of which the movement is likely to become more democratic, in the sense that it is going to have more change, it is going to be in a much better position to help the greater public, right? And I really liked how Asmi said that if the cause is really common to the common man, it is going to help the people who are in that scenario as well, because again these people are from the ground, they know about the grassroots reality, etc. So yes, wonderful, that is really nice. Now that brings me to the end of this session.